Hi, my name is Brian Mahan, and I want to thank you for joining me on this video, The Difference Between Stress and Trauma in Plain English. This is a really big subject, and I normally hold an hour-and-a-half seminar on this subject alone, so I'm just going to boil it down for you and the nuts and bolts. So first of all, I want to explain a little bit about myself. I'm not a doctor, a psychologist, psychiatrist, or a spiritual healer. I am a trauma survivor. And basically what that means is that I have suffered from developmental and shock traumas. And I think most of us have suffered from developmental and shock trauma. So let me explain to you real quickly the difference between developmental and shock. So developmental trauma is anything that might occur to you while you're in utero, so while your mother's actually pregnant with you, anything that she went through, all the way through the birthing process, like the cord wrapped around your neck, things like that. And then your developmental stage, pre-verbal, precognitive, before you even have any memory of much of what happens, there's potential for a lot of stuff to occur that could have long-term effects on your life. So that's our developmental stage. And then there's all those shock traumas that we're aware of that happen throughout our lives, like falling off our bikes and those car wrecks and things like that. And the car wreck is actually the very thing that got me into this work. In 2003, I was driving on the 10 freeway, 7 o'clock at night, 4 nights before Christmas, and there were 2 cars that were racing on the freeway like out of the movie Fast and Furious. The first car blew by me, the second car clipped me. My car flipped end over end, rolled 3 times sideways, slid on the driver's door 150 feet, and then crashed into a concrete wall. Crazy thing is, I walked away from it. The odd thing is 3 or 4 days later, I started having full-blown panic attacks. Now granted, I didn't know they were panic attacks at the time. I was having them, so many of them during the day and so consistently, I just thought I was going crazy. So fortunately, I found my way to a Somatic Experiencing Practitioner fairly early on. And in 3 sessions, my panic attacks completely stopped. And I have not had one in 9 years. Now, I was so moved by this experience and by this profound shift that I immediately started the 3-year training program studying Dr. Peter Levine's Somatic Experiencing. And since that time, I've become an educator and an author, and I hold retreats and workshops and seminars from Northern California to Peru. I actually spend quite a bit of time traveling and teaching. It's one of my favorite things to do. So let's get right into it. So trauma is a really big word. So and a lot of people don't even think that the trauma relates to them, because trauma seems to be something that happens to other people. So let's just take a look at the difference between stress and trauma from a physiological standpoint. So we're just going to look at how the body behaves and responds to threat. When the organism, the human animal, responds to threat of any kind, whether that threat is perceived or real, the autonomic nervous system and the lower brain come online. So the lower brain controls that animal behavior of fight, flight, freeze, the way that we respond to any kind of threat. And then the autonomic nervous system is what mobilizes the animal into action and behavior. And so that's why when we face an experience that's threatening, we feel this enormous surge of energy. So we call that hypervigilance. A heightened arousal. Now, when the threat passes, whether by whatever means that threat resolves itself, the nervous system returns to a normal, natural, healthy, resilient place of homeostasis. We consider that a stressful event. Now, if the nervous system does not completely discharge and return to that healthy, resilient place, then we consider it a traumatic event. So to give you an example, stress can be things like deadlines at work and loss of work or a relationship going bad. And sure, we can get traumatized from those experiences as well, but most of us, once the deadline comes and goes, we're back to our old selves again. Once we heal from that relationship, we're back to our old selves again. But then sometimes events can become highly dysregulating. So in simple terms, you would think that it's like our nervous systems have short circuits in them. We have a tendency as modern creatures to not want to feel. It's almost like we've been taught and trained our whole lives that if we feel something, something's wrong. If we feel nothing, then everything's okay. And because we don't want to feel these feelings, we have a tendency to reach for certain activities and behaviors to self-regulate, right? So I wrote an article one time, when is prayer, meditation, and yoga no different than sex, drugs, and rock and roll? And self-regulation is actually a good thing. It's just a temporary fix. As far as self-regulation goes, is that that's the component that seems to set us up for self-sabotage. And so that's another piece that I really want to talk to you about, because it's not just a matter of stress, anxiety, panic attack, post-traumatic stress disorder, but I think a lot of us suffer from self-defeating behaviors and self-sabotage, and it may not be our fault. It may be that we have dysregulation in our nervous system that's setting us up for these needs to self-soothe. And then that creates patterns and habits and vicious cycles of behavior. So what does all of this mean? It means that if you feel like you suffer from stress, anxiety, panic, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, self-sabotage, it's not your fault. It's a physiological condition, and because it's a physiological condition, you need to approach it from a physiological perspective. Now, what often happens in the aftermath of traumatic events is the psychological component. We start to try to put things into perspective and understand how things could have happened the way that they did, and oh my God, what if it had happened another way, and look at how this is going to affect my life from here on out. And so the psychological component can really start to take center stage. But what we really need to do is we need to get into the physiology. We need to get that autonomic nervous system to regulate on its own and return to that resilient place where you will be left feeling more grounded, centered, boundaried, embodied, empowered, in the moment, safe and joyful. And it's easier than you could ever imagine. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and there's so much more information that I'd like to share with you on more videos in the future. So I hope to see you again.